Recording has started. How's it going, everyone? My name is KGOKev, or Kev, as you probably know, and I am here today with a very special guest. I am here with AkaBaka, the indie developer of Chromatose, a super cool visual novel game currently in development, and also Sucker for Love, the eldritch horror dating sim, a part of the DreadX collection.
AkaBaka.
AkaBaka, how you doing?
Hey everybody, how you doing?
What's up? Yeah, so I've played all of the demos of Chromatose on stream. I've thoroughly enjoyed them, and a lot of people in my fan base share the same sentiments, which, yeah, we all want to know more about the game, and yeah, just more info about it, what went into the making of it, as well as for Sucker for Love, and it would also be cool to know what it's like being an indie developer, which, before all that, let us know a bit about yourself.
So I'm a developer based out of Baltimore. I'm 26 years old. I've been at this for maybe 2, 3, or 4 years at this point. And little known fact is, before this, I was actually in a PhD school briefly for bioengineering. I left instead with a master's and ended up, pursuing my passion of working on video games. And so now I've been doing that for a few years, working on Chromatose mainly, and for the last month or so, been prepping Sucker for Love, the Lovecraftian dating sim.
Chromatose and Sucker for Love are the two main projects that you have released. Have you made anything or worked on anything prior to all of this?
Not so much. I was a dungeon master for a little while, and that was probably my first foray into storytelling and making art, because the campaign that I ran for my friends was actually what is now the story of Chromatose. That was, in a way, kind of my first foray into maybe game development, just not using any software, just in person, with character design, storytelling, and the art. That's kind of where I guess I got started before I started to become a game developer.
Alrighty, starting out with your main game, Chromatose. When did you decide that you wanted to turn all of this into an actualized indie game?
That was when the game ended, when the campaign ended. Yeah, and I was like, I think I made half the players involved cry from the ending.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, you know what, it's a real shame that, the story dies with us here, that, all these characters I spent so much time making, we're the only people who know about it. And so I made Chromatose because I wanted to find kind of the best way to tell this story.
In your own words, how would you describe Chromatose as a game?
It is a role-play game in its truest sense. As soon as you get past the tutorial, how non-linear it is, you can go where you want, hang out with who you want, romance who you want. I tried to unconstrain where you can go, what you do, and what decisions you make as much as possible, so that it feels truly like me being your dungeon master and then just telling you what happens when you do whatever you want.
How different is the story of Chromatose from the original campaign?
A lot, actually. The campaign that I was running for my friends was part of maybe like a 5-year campaign. Yeah, there was a lot of chapters, a lot of sections, and a lot of characters. Somewhere between like a 5th and a 10th. I trimmed it down big time. And because I had trimmed out a lot of context, I kind of needed to rewrite these characters' backstories. And so their personalities are pretty much untouched. They're the same characters from the campaigns. Their backstories are all changed to work in the standalone story of Chromatose. In the original story, they people had like powers, like superhuman abilities that each of the characters had. Mm-hmm. But it would have taken me so long to get started on the story of Chromatose if I wanted to keep it absolutely 100% in context of the original campaign. So I just kind of threw that all out the window and put everybody in a dream world.
I remember when I was streaming one of the demos for the game that you mentioned all of the characters were a part of this initial campaign, except for Imogen, who was added after the fact.
Yeah, Imogen's the only character that was made just for Chromatose. Imogen was a character that was made when I found that I didn't really have an existing character that fit well into a yellow mark, which is someone that is fearful for the future. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of took the opportunity to make another new character. I always like to do something that is maybe not so frequently seen, like maybe make a character that you haven't seen a million times, maybe make a character that combines 2 traits you've seen before in an unusual way. Imogen is a kid with an overactive imagination, to her active detriment. Like, she is such an overactive imagination that in the coma world, her world becomes the most nightmarish and scary of all, because she just cannot keep her paranoia and fear of the future in check. And I thought, that's pretty interesting that in most anime that you've seen, when you have these like little girl characters, these little sister characters that none of them have, kind of the jittery, overactive imagination that kids usually have. And so I thought I'd try something new and see if I wrote this character to be super afraid, super like catastrophic thinking, kind of like so detached from reality with our overactive imagination that it kind of hits new notes that you don't really see with child characters, despite overactive imaginations being a core part of kids growing up. That was when I was sort of filling in the color marks. One point early in development, I had a cast of 20 total, and so it was like 2 people per color. But I kind of quickly realized, wow, a lot of these stories are kind of weak or kind of repeat on each other, and so I made a decision for my sanity's sake to cut off half the cast. So that
you Thanos them all?
I Thanos snapped the cast to make sure that I could actually make this game and to combine the stories that were weakest and to form a stronger story. That's why now there's only 1 character per each color, exception to like the white marks. I couldn't cut either Isaac or Lilith because they were both so good.
How did you come up with the name Chromatose?
So the name came because I'm just a shitter for puns and plays on words. And so it's a combination of the words chromato for color and comatose for being in a coma. It's a colorful coma world. That's how the name came about.
Who are the other members of the Chromatose Dev Team?
So I got myself, we got Yuzu, Yuzuki Mas, he's our composer, and he does an excellent job with all the music for Chromatose. Yuzu only makes bangers. You know how each world's got its own thing? Well, each world also has its own sound. And so I've stretched him so many different ways, doing so many different genres of music. I think he said this is the most range he's ever had to have in a project before, because we've got anime-y black arc, we've got like dubstep red, we've got classical piano blue, orchestra yellow, Gregorian chants and church music for green. He's had to have so much range that it just kind of blows me away how much he just kills every track.
It's impressive, I know, just because of how many like ends of the spectrum he has to develop for. Like,
yeah, and sometimes it feels like he's like pure magic, because I'll like, hey, kind of like this creepy music that they had in Luigi's Mansion, and then Yuzu like turns to me and says, "Say no more, fam." And then just cranks out yellow. We also have Azura, who's another writer. She, I'd say, writes the bulk of the stuff that you read. I fill in like stuff to say like, this door is closed. I don't know what this is. This is an object. So all the low impact short scenes are usually me, but most of the long scenes that you probably would remember are usually her.
So it's like you created the characters, then she's the one that fleshes them out and gives them like depth and just everything like that?
Yeah. The workflow is usually I make the characters, and then I give her like explicit notes on, okay, in this scene it's these characters, and then these things happen in this order. Go ahead and write it. She writes it, does an excellent job, and then I change things because I changed my mind and I'm fickle, and then she yells at me for typos, and that's...
Sounds like a happy family.
Yeah, a happy family. And then we've got Elle. Elle is our monster artist, and she, like every other member of the team, joined the team because they played the demo or saw the demo and was like, wow, this aspect of the game is garbage. I could do better. And then I was like, hired.
Wow.
Yeah, like the monster art, and full disclosure, was kind of dodgy before Elle joined on, because I was doing it myself in addition to all these other things in the project. I'd been drawing anime chicks for a long time, but I hadn't really been drawing monsters, and so my monsters were not so good. And then Elle found the game and was like, I like the game. And then she posted some fan art about said, hey, I made up some monsters for the game, and then the monster drawings were like better than anything in the game. And so I was like, okay, you're on the team, so you stop making us look bad. So that is all of the people that I directly commissioned. There's a bunch of people that have their hands just kind of on the game. So I use this system called VEngine by this studio called XGAsoft, which is this guy that I know. I think his name is Lucas. He's the one who makes the visual novel system. He didn't make it for Chromatose. He just made it for a game maker, and then I've been using it. I've been working with him to help the Chromatose visual novel system look and feel good. And then I also have a guy that I hired towards the beginning called Leandro Saccoletto, and he programmed the core of the battle system. Most of the functionality of the battle system was all him. Most of the art, most of the stuff that you see was me. But this was probably the first person that I worked with towards the beginning, was when we were figuring out this battle system, and it's come a very, very long way. Here's the mock-up.
Oh my god!
For the original battle system, just the concept for what we were trying to figure out. Okay, what does the battle system do? Where are things on the page? And that's what I passed off to the programmer who made the battle system, and then he passed back, which looked like this. it was really functional. Over the years, I've been adding more juice, more polish to the combat system.
And you've been in development for like this game for how many years then so far?
Like a couple, like 2 or maybe 3.
Okay.
Why did you decide to go for this original card-based battle system over your typical turn-based RPG type battle system?
Good question. It is inspired by Catherine, my favorite game of all time, which inspired Chromatose in the first place. You're trying to climb like that block tower while a monster's trying to kill you. And so it's this asymmetrical battle system where instead of you're trying to reduce the enemy's HP to 0 before they reduce your HP to 0, it's you're trying to puzzle solve, and the enemy is just trying to stop you. You're trying to race to the top, and the monster's trying to kill you while you're doing it. Was just so compelling to me, like having to puzzle solve under duress. And so that's kind of what I wanted to set out to do, is make a combat system where you have to kind of quickly puzzle solve, quickly solve a rapidly changing puzzle in front of you, being the cards that you get, while the monster does its best to mess you up, trip you up, mess with your cards, and kill you. And so it kind of evolved from one part Catherine, and then I think I got a little bit of inspiration from Shuffle Time from Persona 4, which is this after combat mini game where you pick cards that have various effects that give you a certain reward after combat.
I wanted to ask about the loading screen messages which load before a battle, all personalized for the world and character. Did you write these yourself, and how did you come up with them?
A lot of those are me just kind of sitting down and then not standing up until I come up with a good catchphrase for each loading screen. So a lot of them are puns on like the context, like take a deep breath is Quentin's, and she's in the blue world, which is underwater, and is about being patient. And so that's just mainly a play on words. They're underwater and drowning, so it's kind of like a double entendre. Mm-hmm. Most of the stuff is a double entendre in that way, where it's a piece of self-care advice, and then it's also, contextually related to what is in the world. And then some of them are like song lyrics that I like. Prima Donna's Don't Go Quietly is from Metric's Combat Baby, which is a song I loved a lot while I was writing Red. Mm-hmm. And it's got this it's got a very prima donna attitude to it. It gets you pumped for the fight, and so that's why I went with that one.
Most of the different worlds have alliteration in their name, like Manic Manor, Sinking Schoolgrounds, Precarious Penthouse, High Heaven. Is there a reason for this?
You ever read A Series of Unfortunate Events? It's based off of that, how each of the books in Series of Unfortunate Events were, I don't know, they all felt like they had zingers. They all felt like they were really compelling when they used alliteration in the title. Like there was like the Grim Grotto, Slippery Slope, Hostile Hospital. Whenever you see it, you get this sense of dread, you get this sense of recognition. It feels like it's a well thought out and thematic kind of zone that you're getting into, which is all of the Chromatose worlds. And so it's kind of an artifact of me being a Series of Unfortunate Events fan as a kid.
Your characters' names are all pretty unique. Why did you give your cast the names that you did?
I wanted to, for the most part, pick characters that if you said their name, you wouldn't be thinking of a different character. That's for like just character recognition, that when you're talking about these characters, I kind of want them to occupy like real estate in your mind that isn't occupied by another character by the same name. I mainly just set out to kind of get a character that kind of forms an aesthetic and a niche of their own. And so Sheer, completely made up name that is kind of like Middle Eastern inspired. There are a couple people named Shirna, which is her real first name. It very suits her, sheer like a garden shear, like very sharp, or very sudden, like a sheer drop.
Did you have like a list of names that you went down during development, or were all these names the first choices for these characters?
Well, a lot of the characters are from the original campaign, and so I'm a bit of a ways detached from some of how some of the names came up. But Quentin is a romanization of a famous like Olympian, a Singaporean swimmer, Kwa Ting Nguyen, which is her full name. And since it's a swimmer, I was like, oh hey, well that works because hers is underwater. Prima Donna, I think that's the name of a character from the cartoon Mucha Lucha. You ever seen that show as a kid? It was that
Honor, family. All I remember is Honor, Family, Tradition, and Donuts. That's all I can recall.
There was these 3 antagonists: Prima Donna, Heavy Traffic, and Carlton Cole Jones, that were like these 3 other wrestlers from this rival school. And I guess Prima Donna stuck with me, and so it just felt like such a cool wrestling name.
Right on, yeah.
So I think that stuck to me. Yeah, for the most part, I was just trying to set out to pick characters, names that didn't have an already famous character by the same name. Kind of failed on that aspect with a couple of characters. I'm looking at you, Leroy Jenkins.
So then characters like Lilith and Isaac, like they never went through any sort of like name change whatsoever?
No, actually, those are some of the older characters that absolutely never. They actually didn't even go through like a design change, maybe more than once from their original drawing.
They're perfect as is. Like, you got it, you know?
Yeah, Lilith's design was the exact same since the first time I drew her, like maybe 7 years ago. I think the very, very oldest character, like the first one I made that isn't currently Chromatose, is Prima Donna, actually.
What is the order that you developed your characters, and how have they changed from beginning to now?
So Prima Donna came very, very first, because she was part of a campaign that none of the other characters were in when I was a dungeon master. So she's the oldest, and then in the next chapter of the campaign, we met most of the other cast, which was Isaac, Lilith, Leroy, Quentin, Sheer, Laszlo, and Mercy. And then in the next chapter, I introduced Izzy. When I started developing the game, I introduced Imogen. So that is the character's oldest to newest. In terms of personality, the characters have really not changed pretty much at all from the very beginning. Izzy is now more menacing and less ditzy than she originally was. Lilith is more aloof and tsundere than she originally was. Sheer is exactly the same. Prima Donna is exactly the same. Quentin, oh my goodness. In the original campaign, Quentin was like a what's her name? Was it Fukua?
Toko Fukawa.
Yeah, that's her. Quentin was originally like her, actually. She had split personality type deal.
Ooh, wow.
It was all like Toko in that way, but and originally her second personality was going to be like a monster that haunted you while you were going out throughout her room, throughout her mind. Since, you know, this is kind of the realm of imagination in the Com world, it would have been kind of cool to have somebody with a split personality be, you can meet both their first face and their second. But that was cut because it didn't really contribute to her story.
Are the characters in Chromatose based on anything or anyone?
They're all me.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Yeah. They're all some part of me that is like cut off, stuck in a petri dish, and allowed to grow into a full person around that one trait. Exception to maybe a couple of characters. I'd say I'm probably like nothing like Prima Donna in any way. I wish I had a little bit of Prima Donna, but I don't. Ultimately, most of these characters are some fear that I have or some trait that I have that I try to build a person around. So like the ones that I'm closest to that I felt like grew into people that were kind of similar to me are Sheer, the pink mark, and Imogen, the yellow mark. And that's mainly because like my biggest two struggles are probably with being a workaholic like Sheer, and then with being anxious about the future like Imogen. But that's kind of how I go about every character, is I give some sort of anxiety that I have, or some sort of fear, or some sort of weakness, or some sort of struggle, and then I give that a character.
Why did you choose the Dream Worlds as the game's setting?
Because it's inspired by Catherine, that's why I stuck it in a dream world. Oh, and actually a lot of it came from this other game, Persona Q, where, you know, you're trapped in a subconscious world and you have to go back through memories and stuff and piece together what happened to people.
How non-linear would you say the game is in terms of how you want to tackle the different worlds?
Well, yeah, it's very modular. You can play the stories in any order. You can save whoever you want. You get the good ending if you make it to the end alive, but you get the best ending if everybody makes it to the end alive.
Of course, yeah.
I would do your best to try to save everyone you can. I would strongly recommend that. It's going to be pretty unique to each person because the game is set up so that you'll get more cards from certain characters, and so you're gonna have only like a 1 in 16 chance of having the same setup, same world as another player, and so that's going to contribute to what order you clear the story in, what characters you relate to the most, and what characters you would spend the most time with in your limited 12 hours before you die in the come world.
Of course, yeah.
Will there be any interactions between the different color marks, whether in their worlds or outside of them?
You will never have a color mark visit another color mark's world, but there are multiple scenes where color marks can interact with each other in special circumstances.
Do you have any like examples you can share, or is that all like spoiler territory?
Yeah. So say you rescued Quentin, and so now she's in the Glasgow National Hospital. And then you rescued Prima Donna, and she's also in the hospital. Then when the ambulance arrives, they're both going to be at the bus stop, and they might have some flavor text about interacting with each other before they get on. And so there's scenes like that, and then various endings, which I can't spoil, have potential for characters to interact with each other outside of their color mark coma worlds.
Which area was the hardest one to come up with ideas for to make it feel and look distinctive and stand out from the rest?
I know the hardest place to draw for me was Imogen's world, and that's because her world is yellow, and hers is a haunted mansion, which is dark, and dark yellow is the ugliest freaking color.
Yeah, it's true.
in the world, and so it was just really hard for me to draw these like sets and scenes and backgrounds and have them be like, you know, like excrement color.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and that was just the palette for the entire zone. So I had the biggest problem trying to design Imogen's world, and I ultimately ended up hue shifting it a little bit to orange. The precarious penthouse shear zone. The first time I drafted it out, it was just an apartment, and in the background was a slowly moving statue as you walked around because it was holding up the penthouse. When I came back to it after some time, I was like, this doesn't feel like it's a teetering penthouse. So I went back and I added in the fact that the camera shifts and the furniture slides around really like precariously, and things slam into walls, and everything that responds to tilting like light and liquids and furniture all moves, and steam rises. You know, like I added so much more in the way of immersion to the zone that the whole world felt way more compelling than it did the first time I drafted it. And that's generally what I am kind of up against whenever I try to design a zone, is how do I make this zone feel immersive, feel different, feel iconic, and in a way that I haven't seen.
Is there a reason why like color is such an integral part of the game's overall aesthetic?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. Number one, it really helps by color coding the characters, their worlds they're in. It makes them feel like a matched set, and then there is a little bit of color theory that goes into everybody's worlds.
That's right.
So
yeah.
so what do you associate the color red with?
Like being hot-blooded, and then like blue would be like being cool and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly it. You know, red, you know, is like blood, courage, vigor, and so it suits Prima Donna, the aggressive tomboy. You've got Laszlo, the green mark, who green is like the color of nature, spirituality, and he's like the deacon. And then another really interesting one is Imogen, the yellow mark, is that she's very paranoid. When you think about the color yellow, it tends to be associated with warnings. Things that pose a hazard to you, like the yellow tape on a subway. The yellow is meant to convey like danger, keys into Imogen's paranoia. The color theory goes into the characters, and then also kind of clues you into what you're going to encounter in the story.
Why are colors like orange and cyan not represented as characters in the cast?
Yeah, it was because orange and cyan were both cut and combined into a different character. Because their stories were the weakest out of the cast.
I see.
Orange was like the spiritual girl that put too much faith in other people, and that got sort of amoeba absorbed into Laszlo instead, telling two different stories with the orange mark and with Laszlo, and so I combined them. And then the other character was Cyan, and hers was like the opposite of orange, which was like cynicism, but like paralyzing cynicism that makes you so detached from everybody and makes you not commit to anything.
Mm-hmm.
She was too similar in personality to Mercy. She's like somber, hushed, low energy, and so was the cyan mark, and so I was like, okay, these two characters are too similar, I'm going to combine their aesthetics. Like, one thing I get a lot is that there's like a character for everybody, because the characters are so different and so pronounced, and they've got their own sort of struggle, is that usually at least one of these characters' stories resonate with somebody.
Since you just brought up Mercy, do you want to talk about Purple Demo for a bit and how it's going to go?
Yeah. Purple runs counter to Yellow. Yellow was an Imogen story where she has a crippling fear of the future or things that could happen to her. And Mercy is the opposite. She's like a 50-something police captain, and she is haunted by things that have already happened. It's actually really interesting. You remember that opening questionnaire in Chromatose? Like the personality questionnaire? It was really interesting because the younger the person, the more likely they were to swing yellow, and then the older the person, the more likely they were to swing purple. Kind of interesting insight I saw from watching people take the personality questionnaire, that more young people resonate with Imogen and older people resonate with Mercy, looking backwards instead of forwards. Her zone is called the Punishing Panopticon. Panopticon is a dated and very controversial prison. It's the system where I want you to think like an eye. If you think about an eye with a pupil in the middle, that's like a top view of a Panopticon, where the pupil is a guard tower, and then the ring around it are all the cells facing the guard tower. It's a way that guards are allowed to, scrutinize every prisoner of the Panopticon at once, and so that's why it's kind of controversial, because you're always being watched. And in this Panopticon, in Mercy's mind, it houses all of the memories that she regrets. When you pass by the cells, you can see all of the memories that Mercy has that she regrets, and so that's her at different ages. You can see her as a kid, you can see her as a goth girlfriend when she was like in her 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see her closer to her current age, around 50. You'll mostly be hanging out with the real Mercy, not the memories, but you do get to talk a little bit to each of them.
Since she is like the last character that you're finally fleshing out, how do you feel about how you've developed Mercy as a character in conjunction to the rest of the cast?
She fills in a niche that I'm glad that I did as a much older character. A sort of challenge to myself that I really wanted to see an older character be the protagonist of their own story.
Right on, yeah.
And so all of Mercy's arc is about Mercy. When usually, especially in anime, if there's an older female character, she usually is way off on the sidelines. Like, she'll only pop up a couple of times to offer sage wisdom, but ultimately plays second fiddle to pretty much every single other character in the story because, oh no, she's not a 20-something anime girl that can sell, figurines, so we're not gonna give her screen time.
Yeah.
Since every area is relatively unique gameplay-wise, what is the gameplay going to be like for Purple?
It is very Phoenix Wright, actually. This panopticon is being ruled by a super unfair judge that convicts everybody that comes to her court and sentences them to life in prison. This is a metaphor for every memory that goes into Mercy's mind, despite how minor, how she can't let the past go. What you have to do in the Purple arc is go through Mercy's memories and prove her innocent of crimes both real and imagined in kind of a Phoenix Wright evidence collecting and then court defense kind of style. Yeah, I call it Phoenix Light.
Phoenix Light, I like it.
Every arc's kind of got its own thing going for it. Like, Red is like a very combat-centric game, while White is very story-centric, and then Yellow is horror-centric. Purple plays very much like a standard visual novel, where there's lots of CGs, whole mess of CGs. There might be more CGs in Purple than like the other colors combined right now. So there's so much art, so many scenes, so much dialogue. There is a lot that went into Purple that makes it feel like one of the more story-driven color mark stories. Super cozy, super aesthetic. It looks and feels really cool so far.
Yeah, man, I love how distinct all the different areas look from each other. Just the art and everything is fantastic. Purple demo's looking to be really, really cool, so yeah, just definitely can't wait.
Yeah, me neither.
The color mark symbol, which is actually really cool because it's a bunch of letters put together that when they are spread out, spell out coma. How did you come up with the symbol? Like, how did you design it?
That was me doodling while I was supposed to be working, probably. Yeah, a lot of the character designs, a lot of the story and plot points, and then a lot of the symbology are from my grad school notebooks, from loose leaf pages that I was scribbling in when I probably should have been focusing on class.
How did you decide where to place the color mark symbol on each character?
I try to spread it out so that there's no repeats on where the comma mark is.
Right.
So everyone's got it in a unique place, and then ideally it'd be somewhere where the player can see it in their sprite. I do occasionally hit a roadblock and trying to figure out where a character's mark goes, either because their outfit is not in such a way that I'd be able to put a tattoo on an attractive place, or in like Imogen's case, it's like, this is a kid, so where do I put a tattoo? And I just went with, it's on her t-shirt.
In general, what are some of your inspirations, favorite games / series, and how have they affected the course of developing Chromatose?
Persona was very aesthetic sort of inspiration for me. My art style is pretty inspired by Shigenori Soejima, which is the artist for most of Atlus's flagship games. Catherine, which was like the inspiration for Chromatose. And then another one was the Monogatari series. Well, in Monogatari, it's got this sort of episodic kind of deal where Araragi meets a girl with a certain curse and then spends the rest of the season trying to help her through that struggle. And it created this really cool modular monster of the week kind of layout that really resonated with me, that really felt interesting. You know, you met a new person, you're like, oh, I wonder what this girl's haunted by, or what this person's struggles are, and then it felt really insightful, where each arc kind of has its own philosophy behind it, its own motivation behind it, and it kind of creates this really interesting combined narrative where Araragi often kind of takes a back seat to these other characters' lives and stories, and I thought that was a really compelling formula to use, and so that's why, as Leroy, you help these other characters through their struggles.
What would you say is the overall message, or one of the messages, behind Chromatose?
As I worked on the game started to evolve into this very self-care narrative, and trying to write for these characters and figure out their struggles. I looked up lots of ways that these characters would deal with their struggles, and I actually ended up, I think, coming up with some pretty good advice for people that are struggling with something that maybe the characters are too. Shears is going to be a really good example. Like, So I wrote Shears, so I know how it goes, and the plot of Shears' story helps me a lot when I'm trying really hard and I'm overworking myself, and I remember, okay, I need to chill out a little bit. I need to take care of myself. I need to make sure that I'm actually happy and not just overworking myself to death for no reason because I'm supposed to.
A practice what you preach kind of like scenario, huh?
Yeah, I kind of have to.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd actually had a brief conversation at PAX. There was this therapy sort of group, sort of organization that wanted me to clip down parts of Chromatose so that they could use it for therapy. There's a lot of self-care just kind of woven into the game that'll help you, if you take it to heart, will help you take care of yourself. Like you saw the Laszlo hangout where Leroy says what his troubles are, and then Laszlo walks him through a brief self-care exercise, which was actually a real exercise you can do for yourself. It was just an awareness exercise where you try to name 5 things that you can see or hear, and then 4 things, and 3 things, and then 2 things, and 1 thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps you come down from an anxiety attack. The point of a lot of this is to take care of yourself by maybe pulling from something that you know from somebody else.
Other than quarantine, are there any difficulties that you face that have impacted the course of developing Chromatose?
So besides my brief absence while I was going to conventions like DreamHack and PAX, in December, I actually got, I think, stress-induced shingles, actually. The stress, I think, caused the shingles to emerge. And what that does is it's like a virus attack on your nerve endings. And so it's this like debilitating, painful sort of flare-up that can happen wherever it happens to flare up. And in my case, it was like directly next to my eye.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so I almost ended up losing my eye.
That's not good at all, no?
Yeah, and so I was kind of out of commission for about a month on some really strong like painkillers, but after about a month it had kind of gone away, and so I was back into it, and I started prior to that I didn't really take weekends, and I didn't take holidays, and I didn't really take days off or sick days, but I started kind of, well, I say I did, but more like my wife started enforcing weekends. So
yeah, well, there's the workaholic, like you said, like there's the sheer like in you, as you said.
There's an alarming number of parallels between me and Sheer that maybe should have been a cautionary tale if I'm writing it. Maybe I shouldn't push myself so hard. Thing that happened that also slowed development was the George Floyd tragedy.
Yes, of course.
So I'm a Black developer, and so besides not being able to work for 2 days after that because I was just so upset, I was unfortunately right in the middle of working on Purple for Mercy.
I see. Timing would not work out at all.
Absolutely not. And there are themes of like police brutality. There's one point in which Leroy is pinned on the ground, and so it was just absolutely the worst possible timing.
Yeah.
And so besides, being tone deaf if I was to post about it, develop it, it was also really painful to work on it at all. And so that was another thing that, fortunately, I was able to sort of sideline because at the same time, DreadXP had said, hey, do you want to make a game in 10 days if you're free? And I was like, well, my team is trying to, secure a job and secure housing. And I can't work on Purple for who knows how many weeks, because not only would it be, wrong for me to be trying to promote this cop character with these police brutality scenes right now, but I'm also not comfortable with doing it. And so that fortunately worked out because now we have Sucker for Love.
Exactly, yeah. Like at least, something good came out of all that,
Trying to work through Purple at the time. Yeah, that was rough.
Alright, let's move on to Sucker for Love, the eldritch horror dating sim where you date an anime girl Cthulhu.
Eh? What?
How did you come up with the concept for Sucker for Love? How did you come up with a game like this?
Sucker for Love. That only happened because I had interviewed with the publisher DreadXP at DreamHack, the publisher that came up with the DreadX collection that Sucker for Love is featured in. Yeah, that's how we met. I got interviewed by Ted from DreadXP about Chromatose, and then he followed up later on asking me if I wanted to make a horror game in 10 days for him for the DreadX collection. The concept, actually, I can't really take the credit for. DreadXP actually came up with the theme that they pitched to all of the developers involved with the project, which was Lovecrafting. So it's a combination of love mechanics, crafting mechanics, and then Lovecraftian horror. And we had to take that in stride and kind of figure out what we wanted to build a game out of. And my natural, immediate conclusion was, eldritch horror dating sim. Done.
Excellent.
I thought, well, I can't really do anything about crafting because I'm not that strong a programmer, and crafting is a freaking logic nightmare. What else involves some sort of crafting? And I was like, well, using items. So what kind of love-based game uses items? And I was like, well, dating sims do. And it's like, okay, so we got that. And the third part is Lovecraftian horror. So bada bing, bada boom. It's a dating sim about Lovecraftian horrors.
Excellent. Let's begin the date then.
When I ended up on that, like another one of the challenges I want to do is if I'm going to do this Lovecraftian horror dating sim, the girl is going to be a Lovecraftian horror, not an anime girl that is named Cthulhu. So, no knocks against it, but like there's this one anime like Hayori Nyakusan, and it's about a bunch of girls based off of Eldritch horrors, but the problem is like if you looked at them, they're pretty much just anime girls. They don't have any tentacles, they don't have any wings, they don't have green skin. They're just an anime girl that has a Eldritch horror's name. And so the idea was I wanted to make an Eldritch horror girl that if you looked at her, you would be able to guess what Cthulhu looked like. You know, tentacles for her mouth, she's got black tendrily wings, and she's got green skin. So I feel like if you looked at Lynetta, you'd be able to say, okay, well then the monster that she's based on probably has most of these features.
Exactly, yeah. Like if you're gonna date Cthulhu, you gotta go for the full thing, you know?
Yeah, obviously, hashtag relatable. I really did want to push the whole Lovecraftian horror thing, and so like the giving her tentacles for a mouth thing was like a huge like risk. I didn't know if that was gonna be like everyone would be like, ew, freaking gross. When I ran a poll about who would smooch Lynetta, like 3/4 of the people that took the poll says that they would smooch Lynetta.
Hashtag relatable, you know?
Yeah, hashtag relatable.
There we go.
Being a different game from Chromatose and having to work under a time constraint and with rules, what was it like developing Sucker for Love?
So I did say that I was kind of a workaholic, and I definitely did maybe try to bite off more than I could chew with Sucker for Love. It was a really ambitious project, and DreadXP was like, no, whatever you do, make sure that you keep the scope of your games small because you only have 10 days to make them. And I was like, haha, dynamic light physics engine, go burr. I spent 3 days out of the 10 just implementing the book. Like none of the art, none of the music, none of the sound, none of the gameplay, just making it so that you could pick up, page through, and then put down the book. And so I'm kind of happy with how much I decided to do, but some of these days I was doing way more work than maybe I should have tried to. Time constraint was 10 days. Some of the crazier days I went as high as 21 hours straight of development. I tried to go for 24, but I passed out when I was eating. I ate breakfast and I passed out then and there, and so I didn't make it to 24 hours straight, which would have been cool.
It is admirable how dedicated you are to like your craft and everything, but yeah, just do remember to take breaks. Just honestly, yeah.
I'll do it next time.
I had such a kind of lofty, ambitious goal for what I wanted the game to be. And from watching the playthroughs, it looks like it hit. It looks like it was successful. It looks like I did do what I set out to do.
Let's try it again. What could possibly go wrong? Ah!
It was a lot of fun too, though. I know I was saying, yeah, I worked 21 hours and I did it for 10 days straight, and but I had a lot of fun working on a different game for once, because I've been staring at Chromatose for 2 years, and so it was cool getting to mess around with new characters, new settings, new art styles, and I actually figured out a couple of things that I can add to my main game, Chromatose, now. Like the light system that I used in Sucker for Love is dynamic. Once I completed Sucker for Love, I took that lighting system and I applied it to purple, and so now like you can see rain in the street lights more so than you can see it when it's not in the street lights. I'm probably going to just spruce up a lot of the light system stuff. It looks and feels way better now that I've got this dynamic light system as opposed to hard shading in. It just looks so much better. And I wouldn't have figured it out or gotten the asset if I hadn't tried to work on this project.
Since you were under a time limit when working on the game, if you had no restrictions, what would you add to the game?
Oh, I'd add more fine Eldritch girls to the game if I could. The very first design pitch that I gave to DreadXP when they brought me on for the project was that there would be like 3 girls that you can date, and it would have been 3 smaller sort of dating sims. And the interest of my own sanity, I cut 2 of the girls and kept only Lynetta. And then I cut some spells from the game. And then I also trimmed all of the mechanics of the game down to a fuse. Just for my sanity's sake, just to minimize the number of possible bugs. Like if you look at Sucker for Love from a mechanic standpoint, it's actually very, very, very simple. It's like a point and click. You have to open your spell book and then check rituals. You have to rearrange objects in the room to fit the conditions needed for the rituals and then cast the spell. Originally, it was going to be a more physically driven point and click stick where you'd have to, if you wanted to make a circle of candles, you'd have to grab a candle from the stack in your inventory and then put it in the spot, and then grab another candle from your inventory, put it in the spot, do that for all 6 candles, then get your lighter item and then click on each of the candles to light the candles. Instead of doing that, I trimmed it down to a fuse, and it's just you click the spot where the candles are, they light, or you click it again and they all go out. That minimizes bugs, that made it way easier to code. I was done in like a couple hours as opposed to a couple of days. Pretty much everything is you click it once and it toggles its state.
What is it like being an indie developer?
So I have a very non-standard experience as an indie developer, because I'm a house husband actually. Like, this is my full-time gig. My wife is kind of the breadwinner. I just kind of get to work on my passion of making video games all day in exchange for like cooking and cleaning.
Does she fully embrace your creative ventures and everything like that?
Oh yeah, no, she tells me which characters are hot and which aren't.
Oh,
how to
cool.
make Lynetta look cute.
Do you have any advice for other indie developers or people looking to get into the scene?
I'd recommend to any developer to try to get your game to a convention. Not necessarily just because it'll be like your ticket to success or something crazy like that. It's when you start feeling like you're a legit game developer. Like, I started meeting people, I started meeting other developers. Yeah, and it feels like legitness, because now it's like, yeah, my game was at DreamHack, or it was at PAX, or yeah, I met so-and-so player at DreamHack, and I met so-and-so developer at PAX. One of the best things that's helped me along the way is having another person, who would be my wife in this case, that makes a really good friend that will tell you when you've got a bad idea. When you post something, when you say, hey, can you give this character design a look or this plot point a look? Mm-hmm. They're not going to be the kind of person that'll be like, it's cool. You know, Caroline, my creative assistant, she has single-handedly like prevented so much like bad stuff ending up in both Chromatose and Sucker for Loves just by being like my second head that lets me know, no, Joey, that's bad. Just having sort of this second head has helped in a lot of ways, because it's the second opinion that says, yes, this is good, no, this is not, and I can trust it to the point where if I think something is good and then I show it to my wife and she thinks it's good too, then it's good to go. I can stop thinking about it, I can move on.
Exactly, yeah.
And then if I think it's good and then she doesn't think it's good, it means I need to fix something. And that's just been, it just keeps things super streamlined and preliminary quality control too.
Through being an indie developer, how has it impacted you socially, and has it gotten you noticed by anyone that you respect?
Through being an indie developer, I've met a lot of other pretty cool indie developers. Manly Badass Hero and Jesse Cox, who produced Monster Prom, have already like played Sucker for Love, and so getting to talk to these people is really, really cool. Mm-hmm. It's one of the first times that I haven't really had imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Like, when I was in grad school, I kind of had imposter syndrome big time. But it kind of feels like I'm not faking now that I'm, I've been making these games and I've been going to conventions and I've been meeting these people that I agree with, mm-hmm. that are like-minded, that are also indie devs, and it's cool being able to just walk up to like Sukebon Games, who made
Valhalla, exactly, yeah,
and be like, hi, I love your game. Who came up with this for Nirvana, your new game? And then being able to just swing over to the other side of the booth, just talking to Sukebun Games, the writer at Valhalla, swing over to the other side of the booth because I'm also here at this event at PAX, and then being like, hey, World of Horror, I love your art style. I love World of Horror. I've had lots of fun playing it. Mm-hmm. And then running into this guy at DreadX because the developer for World of Horror is actually in the same collection as me.
Wow.
Yeah, he made The Thing in the Lake from the DreadX collection too, which is the retro-looking 2D one in the collection.
Wow, it's cool how like connected everything is, and like how like when one window opens, like you can just everything just comes together,
Yeah, it's so supportive and it's so tight knit that you'll just run into so many people just by going to events and talking to other developers and stuff.
If you could go back in time and give yourself, your past self, some advice, or anyone else that's just starting out, what advice would you give? So
this is feedback. This is a piece of advice that you can find anywhere, but I decided to willingly ignore it. Make your first couple of games small, because my first game is like Chromatose, and the problem is now that I'm sitting here kind of like a veteran and game maker, and I'm sifting through code, and I'll just see some stupid shit I coded when I was first starting out that absolutely like breaks the game.
What are some positive experiences you've had with other indie developers that you've met, or just other people in this field?
One Step from Eden Dev is a great friend. I might be more accurate to say he's like my mentor and I'm like his pupil.
Oh, wow.
He is like a smash hit and he knows how to do marketing well. He knows how to. I'm like 1 year displaced from him. Like he did his Kickstarter a year ahead of me, so I went to him for help with Kickstarter. He published his game like a year ahead of me, so I'm looking for help for how to market and how to publish a game. Yeah, oh no, I love One Step from Eden. It's another masterpiece. It's an excellent game. Him, through his signal boosting and advice, has really helped Chromatose's development big time. He helped set off kind of this chain reaction of getting seen. Ultimately, it helped Sucker for Love get made because he recommended that I reach out to Game Jolt during my Kickstarter for a feature because Game Jolt loves indies. And Yaprak Dekarmin, I think she's the owner of Game Jolt, is like the most supportive person of indie devs I've ever seen. I said, hey, my Kickstarter is live. Do you think you could feature my game? And she's like, absolutely. We just need 1 month's notice and we'll give you the front page. That gave me so much traffic right in the final push. She invited me then to be at Indie Jungle at PAX West. And that was the beginning of my tour, which then put me at PAX East and DreamHack. And at DreamHack, I met Ted from DreadX. And then at DreadX, they invited me to make Sucker for Love.
One of the hardest things when first starting out in any creative field is like the cold email, trying to get people to notice or work with you. Did you go through any similar struggles at the start?
That was the Kickstarter. That was the Kickstarter all the way because I didn't really have a following at the time of the Kickstarter, and so I was just messaging anybody that would listen and give my game a chance. And so I probably sent out, oh, good Lord, maybe 300 press emails.
Yep, that's how it goes.
Yeah. My wife is telling me over my shoulder that it was more like 500.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah, no, I definitely had that phase, and that was pretty rough. That did pan out somewhat, but the most meaningful connections I've made have been at conventions or by talking to Yaprak from Game Jolt. I would say that you and anyone listening should definitely give the DreadX collection a shot. Not just because my game is in it. That is one reason, but if you like horror or if you are an indie developer, it's kind of like how I'd recommend doing a game jam. It's a kind of eye-opening experience that really sort of brings you into the heart of game development. It's a very tightly grouped like indie dev experience. Like you're getting to meet all of these really dedicated, passionate indie devs that DreadX really did a good job of finding some really talented people, and so I would highly recommend y'all give the DreadX collection 1 and 2. I'm in 2 a shot.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we're basically done here. Which then, how can anyone who's interested in Chromatose, just everything in general, how can they follow up with you?
I've got a Discord that is linked on my Twitter. It is Chromatose Dev, just at Chromatose Dev on my Twitter. You can reach out to me there, or you can reach out to me on my Discord where we discuss either Chromatose or Sucker for Love. And if it's about business, you can always email me. Thanks for having me on the interview.
Anytime. Thank you. Now, of course, it's time for my own shameless plug. If you're new to me and my channel, hey, what's up? My name's Kev, or KGO. I play a lot of indie games, as well as games from Nintendo and Sony. I have a playthrough of all the Chromatose demos currently released you can check out, and I'm definitely planning on long-hauling / 100%ing the full game when it releases. The link to my playthrough, as well as all the relevant links for Chromatose and all the social medias and more, will be in the description below, so make sure you check that out. I also played Sucker for Love and stream quite often, so yeah, if you had a good time, feel free to stick around. Also definitely want to do more stuff like this in the future, so yeah, hopefully we can do so. You can join my Discord, you can join AkaBaka's Discord, check out Chromatose when it releases, it currently has a Steam demo available. Also post in the comments what you thought of the vid, and if you have any questions for AkaBaka or Chromatose and more, feel free to express them in the comments as well. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, follow me and AkaBaka and everyone on his dev team on all the social medias if you haven't already. Super special thanks to AkaBaka for doing the interview. It was a real pleasure, and just the hype is on for Chromatose. I'm highly anticipating it, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it as well. Good luck to AkaBaka in all of his future endeavors, and with all that said, this is KGOKev signing out. I hope to see you guys next time on anything else we do. Thank you guys again. Peace out for now. I'll see you guys next time. Laters.